Yes, sir, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Big J, all day, aka the Mighty Big J, and this is the Hype Show. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new here, please do me a huge favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Definitely appreciate you tuning in if this is not your first time, or if it is your first time. Either way, I appreciate you. We're going to jump into this broadcast here, and we're going to talk about the Thursday night football matchup here a little bit between the Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers. That's going to be 8:15 Eastern. That'll be on Amazon Prime Video if you have that. We're also going to talk about an international matchup that's happening on Sunday early in the morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, because it is an international matchup taking place at Wembley Stadium in London. That's going to be between the Atlanta Falcons and the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's technically considered a home game for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but nevertheless, it's in London. So we'll be talking about both of those games here, and then I'll kind of list off the other Week 4 matchups coming up, and I'll have more in-depth analysis on those coming up on Sunday. And we'll talk about Damian Lillard being traded to the Milwaukee Bucks in a 3-team trade with the Phoenix Suns and the Portland Trailblazers all being involved. So a little bit of stuff to talk about. Won't be quite as long as a Sunday or Tuesday broadcast, but nevertheless, we got stuff to talk about here. Again, we're going to start this broadcast off talking about the game starting in a little less than 2 hours here. That's going to be the Green Bay Packers and Detroit Lions taking place at Lambeau Field. The Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers are each 2-1 at this current time heading into Week 4, and they're currently tied atop their division of the NFC North. The NFC North consists of also the Minnesota Vikings and Chicago Bears, each being 0-3. So it's a tale of two different paths here. Green Bay and Detroit are looking to each get command of the division, and Minnesota and Chicago, they'll be looking for wins straight up this weekend, and we'll talk about those on Sunday with those teams and who they're playing. But as far as this one is for NFC North supremacy here, straight up. The Lions, this will be their fourth straight victory over the Packers if they can get this win. They won both of their games last season against Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers in the lineup, and then they split the previous season in 2021. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this game goes here. The Lions are favored by 2, and I'm taking the Lions to win this game as well. They had a small hiccup Week 2 against Seattle, and I think that was to do with injuries occurring, but otherwise, this team has looked pretty good so far. They got the win Week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs by 1 point. And, of course, with their victory earlier this week here just a few days ago over Atlanta, 20-6, they're doing what they need to do so far. So, to me, Jared Goff is an underrated quarterback. He's not going to be very flashy or just take your breath away, but he's very efficient. He definitely does what he needs to do with the football, and he isn't very careless. His interception, interestingly enough, that he threw against Seattle that Week 2 game, that was his first interception in over 800 passing attempts, something to that nature. That's pretty interesting. That basically means he's not careless with the football, and even if he doesn't throw to the right guy, he either throws it away or it hits the ground as opposed to being another possession for the team. At this current time here, over the course of the 3 games Jared Goff's played so far, he's 72 of 103. That's good for 70% completion percentage. 819 yards, 5 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, just 2 interceptions. So as far as I'm concerned, again, Jared Goff, he's pretty solid for this team, and they really do believe in him. Interestingly enough, I know Matthew Stafford was traded to the Rams. They ended up getting a championship out of it, so that's how a lot of people gauge things. But he's still the right guy for the job. He gets along with his teammates really well, and he relates with the guys that they have as far as personnel on the roster. Looking at this team as a whole, I said that they would make noise in the NFC North, and this is the game to prove that. Again, I'm going to take the Lions to win this game here. Green Bay is going to put up a fight, though, because they're at home. I don't expect this to be a blowout by either team by any means, but I still got the Lions winning this game. We'll have to see how that goes, but I still got the Lions winning this game here. Looking at their next few games after tonight here, they'll be home against the Carolina Panthers October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. The following 2 games are road games. They're at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. They're at the Baltimore Ravens the following week, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then they're home for their Monday Night Football game against the Las Vegas Raiders, 8:15 p.m., October 30th on ABC. And then following that up, they'll be at the Los Angeles Chargers after their bye week. They have a bye week after the Raiders game. So if they can get a win tonight, I can see Detroit beating Carolina and also beating Tampa as well. At Baltimore, we'll have to see how healthy Baltimore is going to be. They're dealing with a lot of injuries right off the bat, and that's definitely what affected them. I feel like in that Indianapolis game. And then home against the Raiders, I don't see the Raiders being that solid of a team. They'll get a couple wins here and there, but I don't see them being a factor long term throughout the season. We'll have to see as we get closer to that game, but I'm going to say the Lions win that game for now, and then they'll hit their bye week after that. So over the next 5 games here, I could see them being 4-1, 3-2 at worst, and that'll just keep them in definitely good shape as far as their season goes here for Detroit. Looking at the Green Bay Packers and their schedule here after tonight's game against Detroit, again, I'm going to call that an L. But I'm gonna say, looking at this game here, they'll be let's see, they're at the Las Vegas Raiders for Monday Night Football. So that gives them about 11 days between games, give or take. And that game is on October 22nd. I'm sorry, October 9th, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. They have a bye week, and then they have a game October 22nd at the Denver Broncos, 4:25 p.m. Eastern on CBS. The next 2 games after that, they're home. They're home against the Minnesota Vikings, October 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And they're also home against the Los Angeles Rams, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And then they'll be at the Pittsburgh Steelers, November 12th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. So, again, I'm saying Detroit in a close one. I'm going to stick with Detroit. Their the left All-Pro tackle David Bakhtiari was listed as being on IR now. He's going to miss a minimum of the next 4 games with a knee injury. So that's definitely going to affect the offensive line for Green Bay. We'll have to see if Detroit can pressure and kind of make things difficult on Jordan Love, because they'll be the first team, I feel like, on their schedule to have done that. Chicago, they just as a whole are kind of a mess. Atlanta is a decent young football team, and the Saints just couldn't hold them in the fourth quarter. So as far as their short schedule, the short amount of games they've played so far, Detroit is going to have the best pass rush, and with you losing an All-Pro like Bakhtiari, that's going to affect them. So again, I got Detroit winning this one close. I think Green Bay is going to have a pretty solid game overall, but Detroit's just going to be the better team. Again, they're at the Raiders for Monday Night Football, so that's 11 days between tonight and their next game, Week 5, and that's typically really good as far as having a large amount of time between games. I went in depth about this in the last couple broadcasts, but the schedule lays up pretty nice for their next couple games for them to keep things rolling. So I'm going to say they win the game at the Las Vegas Raiders, and then they'll have their bye week for Week 6, and then again Week 7 they're at the Denver Broncos, October 22nd, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. I could see them winning that game too, honestly. As far as Denver goes, they'll be home against Minnesota and home against the Rams. Something tells me that they'll split those games. That's just the idea that I have in my head, is that they'll split those games. Something is telling me that. So I'm gonna say they beat Minnesota, and something fluky happens where they lose to the Rams. The Rams are very underrated based on the Cooper Cup issue and based on their issues and changes they've had on defense. They traded Jalen Ramsey away. He's now with the Dolphins. So me personally, I genuinely feel like the Rams are slightly underrated. I think McVay can coach them up for that game because that's kind of a pick 'em. So over the course of these next 5 games, with tonight's loss to Detroit, that's what I'm guessing here. I think they can win the next few games after that due to scheduling and due to their opponent. That would be the Vegas Raiders, the Broncos, and the Vikings. So I feel like they'll win those games. I feel like they would be a 3-2 football team. Optimistically, if you want to be 4-1, but I think they'll be 3-2. And like I said, that'll keep them in the mix alongside the Detroit Lions. Even if they don't win this game tonight, they'll still be in the mix unless something devastating happens to the rest of that roster. They got a lot of good young pieces in the draft this past year. Tight end Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State, they picked him in the 2nd round. He's already basically their starting tight end. Robert Tonyan was the starting tight end the last couple seasons, and he's now with the Chicago Bears. So he was essentially the replacement. They drafted another tight end in the 3rd round by the name of Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State. He's more of a blocking tight end. He doesn't catch the ball as well as Musgrave is, so that's kind of why Musgrave shot to the top of the depth chart. And another sneaky good player that the Packers have, Jaden Reed, he was also picked in the 2nd round, wide receiver out of Michigan State. I like the way he plays as well. And between having a young nucleus with Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs, we haven't seen much of Christian Watson yet, but they have a really young receiving core. And I think Jaden Reed, he can be a part of that depth chart, at the top of that depth chart pretty quickly. Aaron Jones, whenever he's in the game, he's capable of catching balls as well. And luckily for them, they were able to kind of tide that storm, winning 2 or 3. But if you have Aaron Jones out of the backfield with Christian Watson healthy, Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed, and then Luke Musgrave catching passes as well from the tight end position, that's a pretty solid position to be in. So the Green Bay Packers, they do have a nice young nucleus. So again, like I said, if they do go 3-2 over these next 5 games, they'll be in great shape. So again, Detroit, one more thing to touch on before I go to the next game here. The Detroit Lions here, looking at their team, I think what's going to affect them is the injuries that they have. Because I was kind of looking at their depth chart again. Keep in mind, CJ Gardner Johnson, he tore his pectoral in the week 2 game against the Seattle Seahawks, and he's going to be on IR. So that means he's going to miss another couple of games after tonight at minimum. And with that type of injury, it's possible he can miss more time. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. David Montgomery, he injured his thigh in their previous game. He's listed as questionable, but he's expected to play tonight. So for the Detroit Lions here, CJ Gardner Johnson is a huge loss, but I think they'll still be able to weather that storm here. He just brought a certain attitude to that team that made them feel a certain way about what they're going to do. So as far as I'm concerned here, I'm still taking the Lions, and we'll just have to see how each of these teams shake out as far as their schedule. On the next game I'm going to talk about here, the Falcons and Jaguars. Again, that's going to be played in London at Wembley Stadium. That game will be 9:30 Eastern on ESPN Plus. So if you have ESPN Plus, you can stream that game here. I'm not sure it'll be on TV anywhere in the local markets as far as Jacksonville or Atlanta, but for anyone else, they'll have to check it out on ESPN Plus. 9:30 Eastern on Sunday, October 1st. Each team, to me, hasn't really impressed. The Falcons are 2-1, and the Jaguars are 1-2. Again, each team hasn't really impressed me. Even the victory that Jacksonville got to start off their year against Indianapolis, it didn't really blow me away. So that's one thing that kind of jumps out at me. And then with the Atlanta Falcons, they're in a division where all the teams are at the top at 2-1, and then you have the Panthers at 0-3. So there wasn't really high expectations to begin with the Atlanta Falcons anyway. So as a whole, this game is really just a game for each team to kind of like keep pace. Again, looking at the Atlanta Falcons, they're 2-1. They're tied with New Orleans and Tampa Bay. With New Orleans, Derek Carr is expected to miss some time with that shoulder, but they're going to go for it on a week-to-week basis as far as how he's doing. And with Tampa, you got kind of a situation where Baker Mayfield unfortunately reared his ugly head. He got those happy feet I was talking about against Philly, and they made things tough on him the other night, Monday Night Football, with that loss of 25-11. So again, going back here, the Atlanta Falcons here and Jacksonville Jaguars. I said early in the season that I loved what Jacksonville was going to do, and I said that they would take the AFC North based on me, or I'm sorry, the AFC South based on not knowing what everybody else was like. And I'm going to stick by that for now. Houston has been surprising. The Colts have definitely been surprising, and the Titans have been kind of just mediocre to say the least. So I still got Jacksonville as the best team, but Indianapolis leads that division for a reason. Really think that Gardner Minshew coming in for Anthony Richardson kind of solidified things. Anthony Richardson has only played 2 games, so he's definitely got a lot of work to do, and he's still green. So he's going to have some work to do. As far as the winner of this game, again, this is a home game for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but both teams are traveling. Interestingly, I'm still going to say Jacksonville wins this football game. I'm going to take Jacksonville to win this game. Looking at Atlanta's schedule, if they were to lose that game, they would fall to 2-2. They'll be home the following week on October 8th for their Week 5 matchup against the Houston Texans. They're home. That'll be 1 p.m. Eastern, October 8th on Fox. They're also home the following week against the Washington Commanders, October 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Then they'll be at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And then they will be at the Tennessee Titans, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th on CBS. So, looking at the next 5 games here, again, I said I'm taking Jacksonville to win their game on their London trip here. The Houston Texans, again, they're playing solid. They're pretty solid. They got their first win, and they're a young team, so they're kind of unpredictable. And in my head, CJ Stroud kind of showed me something here. He showed me he's got the ability to be the quarterback that that team needs for the future. And with Desmond Ritter, he's kind of been bailed out by the people around him as far as getting the victory, and that's on offense and defense. I don't truly believe in my head or heart, excuse me, that he's the better quarterback between him and CJ Stroud. I know CJ Stroud is a rookie, but Desmond Ritter essentially is a rookie as well. Because keep in mind, last season, the quarterback going into the 2022 season was Marcus Mariota for Atlanta. They allowed him to start 13 games, and when they saw that things weren't really going anywhere, they just decided, let's get the kid in now, Desmond Ritter, and see what he's got. So this game coming up is technically only his seventh start. Whereas with looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence has the seasoning, but it's just he has underwhelmed this season. So again, I'm still going to take Jacksonville. And going back to Houston with CJ Stroud being a rookie, I just don't know if that'll really be the catalyst for a loss or a win. I just think that Houston could steal that game because they have a coach that gets them fired up and he gets them wanting to play. Because by as far as I'm concerned, Houston has been in the other games that they've been in previous to this one they got coming up here on Sunday. So we'll talk more about Houston and their schedule here in a second. We're going to follow up here. Looking at Atlanta here, they are home against the Washington Commanders October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Then after that, they're at Tampa, at Tennessee, the 22nd and 29th. I could see Atlanta losing to Tampa simply because they're at home. The game after Houston versus Washington, that also feels a lot like a pick 'em as well. Washington, they had two good games to start, but then they were brought back down to earth by Buffalo week 3. And that feels like, again, Sam Howell, he's kind of in a similar situation to what I talked about with Desmond Ritter a bit ago. He came in later in the year in 2022 when the quarterback that they had in, Taylor Heineke, wasn't really getting it done. They decided we're probably out of it. Let's see what the kid has. Because the problem with Washington, and I mentioned this before, it's not that they were a bad team last year. It's just that when you have Dallas, the Giants, and the Eagles, excuse me, all with better records than you, all having pretty good seasons, that's what knocked them out. If the Washington Commanders were in any other division, like for example, if they were in the NFC South last year, they would have won that division because they had a better record technically than all those teams. But Tampa's 8-9 was better than Carolina, New Orleans, and Atlanta 7-10. So that's how Tampa got in. You know, Tom Brady was kind of on his last legs, and we saw that. But getting back to Atlanta, as far as Washington, I think I'm going to say that they beat them. I'm going to say they lose to Houston and Jacksonville these next 2 weeks, but they beat Washington and then they lose to Tampa. At Tennessee, Tennessee hasn't shown me much either. They're kind of on the cusp of being mediocre, but they're also on the cusp of being great if they can get Derrick Henry going, and if Ryan Tannehill can develop any kind of chemistry with DeAndre Hopkins. That's what they were expecting, and it just hasn't come to fruition so far with this team. So I just don't have high hopes for Tennessee at the moment. They're going to have to show me a couple of games here where they can do things. As far as Atlanta at Tennessee, that still feels like Tennessee could win that game just for the fact they're at home. But if over the next couple weeks they have any injuries or they just don't show any fight, Atlanta could look better and better as that time goes on to win that game. But we'll just have to see. So based on what I'm looking at here with the Atlanta Falcons, with them losing on Sunday and with their 4 games after that, I see them winning the Washington game. That will put them at 1-4 hypothetically. So like I said, we're going to have to see with the Atlanta Falcons and just with the NFC South as a whole. That division is very muddled, and there's no dominant team. There's no team that screams out, I'm great. There's no team like the Dolphins, like the 49ers, any team like that that screams out, I'm a great team. So give me 1-4 over the next 5 games for the Atlanta Falcons. That's just unfortunately how I see it. And then as far as I'm concerned, was talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars and looking at their schedule. After at their trip to London, after they defeat the Atlanta Falcons, is what I'm saying they're going to do. We'll have to see. But again, they have another international game the following week against the Buffalo Bills at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That's also in England as well. So they have two different games in England the next couple weeks, but they're just in different stadiums. That seems like that's going to be kind of rough. And I've asked this already, but I just wonder if they just stay in Houston. They might as well if you're going to have two games back to back. So after they beat the Falcons and after that game against the Bills here, we'll talk about that in a second here. They're truly home November 5th, I'm sorry, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS against the Indianapolis Colts. Then they have a Thursday night clash at the Saints on the New Orleans Saints on October 19th at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Prime Video. Then 10 days later at 1 p.m. Eastern on October 29th, that following Sunday, they're playing at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they have their bye week after that Pittsburgh Steelers game as well. So for example, if they do beat Atlanta, this is what I think would happen, honestly, against the Buffalo Bills that following week. If they find a way to get acclimated to being in London over that time period, I think what could happen is they could beat the Buffalo Bills, but turn around and lose to the Indianapolis Colts again. I'm sorry, turn around and lose to the Indianapolis Colts and end up splitting with those two games with the Indianapolis Colts. I could see that happening just because of the fact that you're going to be spending all that time in England and then you're coming back stateside and your body's going to getting reacclimated to that time zone again. That's really difficult for a lot of people. You can obviously see why. So I could see a situation where they beat Atlanta and then somehow beat Buffalo close and then turn around and lose to Indianapolis. We'll just kind of have to see how that goes, but I wouldn't be shocked if that occurred just due to the circumstances that they're having there. With them having a Thursday night game at the New Orleans Saints, I specified this in a previous broadcast, but I don't feel like that's going to be an issue. They're not traveling far from Jacksonville to New Orleans. And if Derek Carr is missing any time at all and you have Jameis Winston as your quarterback for the Saints, I could see Jacksonville taking that game as well. At the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's going to be a tough game for them. Heinz Field is a tough place to play, especially if your defense is humming and flying at the quarterback the way they need to be. And that's kind of what we've seen so far. I'm not sure if Cam Hayward will be back for the Pittsburgh Steelers at that time to help with the pass rush, but I would like Pittsburgh to win that football game. So over the course of the next 5 games, I could see this team being 4-1, 3-2 at worst. Those two international games are going to really kind of tell the story as to where they're heading, honestly, because if they fall to 1-4, losing both of those games, they're going to be in trouble early. Even though this division is muddled, kind of like what I was saying with the NFC South, the AFC South, if you fall too far, you could be out. But at the same time, I don't see them falling that far because Houston and Indy are still question marks, and Tennessee hasn't shown me anything yet. So that's how I feel about those two particular games here. And again, on the Jaguars Falcons game, that's going to be on ahead of my Sunday broadcast, so that's why I'm giving you guys a preview of those two games and those two teams. And like I said, Lions and Packers here, that game starts at about 8:15 Eastern time here, so a little less than an hour and a half here. Looking at the NFL matchups for Week 4, I'll just go ahead and give you guys the games that are coming up here. After the Falcons-Jaguars game here at 1 p.m. Eastern, you got the Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. That's going to be at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York, 1 p.m. Eastern. Also at 1 p.m. Eastern, the Denver Broncos travel to Soldier Field to take on the Bears in Chicago in a matchup of two 0-3 football teams. The Baltimore Ravens, they are 2-1. They'll be heading to the Cleveland Browns Stadium to face the Cleveland Browns. They're also 2-1 as well. 1 p.m. Eastern, also, the Cincinnati Bengals travel to Tennessee to take on the Titans at Nissan Stadium in Nashville, Tennessee. Each team is 1-2. The Los Angeles Rams, they'll be heading to Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium and take on the Colts. The Rams are 1-2. The Colts are 2-1. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're 2-1. They'll be heading to Caesars Superdome in New Orleans to face the Saints, who are also 2-1. The Saints expect to be playing with Jameis Winston starting at quarterback. They're also going to be taking the situation with Derek Carr's shoulder week to week, but he's possibly going to be out for that game. I'll verify that I'll know more for you on Sunday, but that's what the word that's around town here in New Orleans is that he's not going to play because of that injury. Suffered a sprained AC joint. Another game at 1 p.m. is an NFC East matchup between the Washington Commanders traveling to visit the Philadelphia Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles are 3-0, and they lead that division ahead of the 2-1 Commanders. That game is 1 p.m. Eastern. Another 1 p.m. Eastern clash on Sunday here is the 0-3 Vikings traveling to face the 0-3 Panthers in another 0-3 matchup. That's at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, 1 p.m. Eastern. One of those teams has to get off the schneid there. Obviously, kind of the same as with the Broncos and Bears. Each of those teams are 0-3, so somebody has to win, hopefully. Another one, the final 1 p.m. matchup here coming up on Sunday is the Houston Texans hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's on NRG Stadium in Houston, 1 p.m. Eastern. The Steelers are 2-1, while the Texans improved to 1-2 last week with their victory over Jacksonville. Coming up at 4:05 p.m. Eastern at SoFi Stadium, the Raiders are traveling to visit the Los Angeles Chargers. The Raiders have lost 2 straight since getting their first win over the Broncos to start the season, and the Chargers got their first win of the season late over the Vikings here to improve to 1-2. That's at 4:05 p.m. Eastern. Then there are 2 games at 4:25 p.m. Eastern. The Cowboys at 2-1 will be hosting the New England Patriots. That'll be at AT&T Stadium. Zeke Elliott returning to the Cowboys for the first time as an opposing player playing for the Patriots. He signed a deal in the offseason with them after the Dallas Cowboys released him after 7 seasons. So that'll be interesting how that's going to go. Hopefully they have some sort of like video for him because he was pretty good for him while he was there. It's just he kind of declined over the last couple seasons. The Patriots are 1-2 after their victory over the Jets last week, and unfortunately the Cowboys fell to 2-1 with their loss to the Arizona Cardinals. Speaking of the Cardinals, they'll be heading to San Francisco to face the San Francisco 49ers at Levi's Stadium. That's actually in Santa Clara. The 49ers are 3-0, and the Giants are currently 1-2. Each team looking to get another victory. The 49ers are flawless, and the Cardinals got their first win with their victory over the Cowboys. So that should be an interesting game here with the NFC West matchup to see who's going to do what in that division. The Sunday night football matchup here is going to be the New York Jets hosting the Kansas City Chiefs at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The Jets are 1-2, and the Chiefs are 2-1. They've won their last 2 games since their opening loss to the Detroit Lions. That's going to be a very interesting game here. We'll definitely have more in-depth talk about that on Sunday. And the final game of Week 4 is the Monday night football matchup. The New York Giants will be hosting the Seattle Seahawks. That game will be played on Monday, October 2nd, 8:15 p.m. on ABC and ESPN. The Giants are 1-2, and the Seahawks are 2-1. That should be a very interesting game here. But Seattle traveling to New York here. Will that be a factor of any kind? Not sure, but that should be a very interesting game here. That kind of wraps it up for what the preview is going to be for Week 4. And again, like I said, I'll kind of go over the results for you of what's happened with the international game and tonight's game here for Thursday Night Football. And I'll pick a winner for the rest of Sunday's slate and for the Monday Night Football game as well here. The final thing we're going to touch on before we wrap up the broadcast here, there was some huge news in the NBA here as former point guard of the Portland point guard Damian Lillard was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks in a blockbuster 3-team deal. This is going to pair Damian Lillard up with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that's going to be a very interesting tandem that they have there. Now, Milwaukee did have to give up Drew Holiday. He's going to Portland. Center DeAndre Ayton, he's going from Phoenix to Portland. And also Toumani Camara. He's actually a rookie that Phoenix drafted, so they got a good look at him in Summer League, and they actually liked him, but they actually parted ways with him, and he's going to Portland as well. Portland is also receiving Milwaukee's 2029 unprotected first-round draft pick and unprotected pick swaps in 2028 and 2030. So in 2028 and 2030, Milwaukee will get the better of the 2 picks as a result of this deal. The Phoenix Suns are receiving center Yusuf Nurkic from the Portland Trail Blazers. They're receiving reserve guard Grayson Allen from the Milwaukee Bucks. And they're also receiving Nasir Little and Keon Johnson as well as part of that package from the Portland Trail Blazers. Nasir Little, he was this is his 5th year coming out of North Carolina. He was drafted in 2019. He was a nice reserve for them. He didn't see that much time. He played in 54 games last season and averaged about 18 minutes for Portland. And Keon Johnson, I actually heard his name a little bit in camp. He was talked about pretty good, a good amount. This is his 3rd year out of the University of Tennessee. And I kind of heard the same thing about him here. He only averaged 5 points a game, but he was only in 46 games. And for Phoenix, that was kind of the goal, was to get depth, was to get more guys beyond your starting lineup here. And also with trading DeAndre Ayton, that was a situation where he kind of wasn't the presence that he needed to be in the locker room, so they kind of got him out of there. And that's kind of what this deal was about as well for Phoenix. So for me, I think this is a win all around for all the teams. The Portland Trailblazers are getting a couple of pieces that can help them. With Drew Holiday, there is expected to be more trades happening with him. I honestly think that Drew Holiday was a piece that they needed that they can use and turn around to get more pieces. With the young guys that they got, they drafted Scoot Henderson, and then you also have Anthony Simons as well. They want to build around those two guys at the guard position. And so I think Drew Holiday will be on the move again before the season starts in October. So we'll just have to keep an eye and see if things happen with him. So yeah, this is huge. Milwaukee, they get their star to go along with Dame, with Giannis. Portland, they get some pieces and some picks as well, and a couple of pick swaps. And the Suns think they get depth. So in all honesty, I think this is a great thing. How long will Dame Lillard be with Milwaukee? I honestly don't know. Who's to say? He's going to be at least there for another couple of deals based on the salary that he had. But Milwaukee, they're excited. They're trying to get back to the NBA Finals. Damian Lillard, he averaged 32 points and 7 assists last season. Now, he only played in 58 games because he sat out the final month of the year because of the fact that Portland was out of it very early, and they wanted to see what they had again with the young guys that they have in place. So, to me, this is going to be very interesting. The only thing that I would caution if I'm the Milwaukee Bucks is that Drew Holiday was a very good two-way player. What I mean by that is that he was very good on offense, but he was also very good at playing defense against their best guard, their best perimeter players. So you're gonna miss that very much with Drew Holiday. But Dame Lillard, he's a baller, man. That guy can go. And he spent 11 seasons with the Portland Trailblazers, and it was becoming very clear that they weren't going anywhere. As far as the winners, I don't think Portland, Phoenix, or Milwaukee lost by any means. They all kind of got what they needed. If there is a loser, it's anybody in the Eastern Conference that wanted Dame Lillard or they didn't want somebody to get Dame Lillard along with them in the Eastern Conference. The Miami Heat, they were the front runners that I heard the entire summer, and they didn't get their guy. If you're Boston Celtics, this is going to hurt because you got to see this guy a few times a year. The top teams in the Eastern Conference, they're not going to like this very much, especially Miami and Boston. Those are the two teams that come to mind because they were in the Eastern Conference the last 2 years prior to 2021 when obviously Milwaukee went and won it all. So this is huge. This is a huge deal. We'll have to see how the Bucks look as far as their chemistry and everything because chemistry is very key. We hear about deals all the time where players come in, they're traded to a certain team, but the chemistry isn't there. The Bucks, they emerged to the fourth best chances to win the championship on the U.S. sports books. The Denver Nuggets, obviously, they're the defending champions, so they're listed as one. The Boston Celtics are second, and the Phoenix Suns are third. Huge. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks here, this was a great day because you're definitely getting in another marquee player. In exchange for that, you're not really giving up much. I know Drew Holiday, he's a huge deal as far as they're starting the lineup the last couple of years. He was there for that championship. And Grayson Allen is a piece off the bench that gives you defense and gives you a little bit of scoring here and there, but they're going to be fine. The Milwaukee Bucks will be fine. I think with the depth they have with still having Brook Lopez on the team here, you still have key players off the bench. Robin Lopez is with the team now, his brother. You still have Middleton. You still have Portis. They'll be fine. I think this will be a solid basketball team here. We'll just have to see as the season gets closer. And that's the way the NBA is going to be. It's about getting the right guys, getting pieces that can really take you to the next level. That's really what this comes down to. So very exciting. I'm excited for the NBA season, and as it gets closer, we're definitely going to talk more about that with these broadcasts. It's going to be a lot to talk about. Football is kind of dominating the sportscasts right now, but as we get closer to the season, we're definitely going to have more to talk about. But that wraps up tonight's broadcast here. It's an abbreviated broadcast. Thursdays are going to typically be more abbreviated than Sunday and Tuesday just because we have a lot more to go over. But I'm definitely excited here to see how these game goes tonight. And again, we'll definitely talk about the results of the Jacksonville-Atlanta game, the international game as well, and just see how that goes here and kind of let you know how the standings shake up with that here. But like I said, I appreciate everybody that joined me. I appreciate you watching and checking out the broadcast here. I'll be back on Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time here. And actually, I apologize. That's 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, 9:30 regular time, 8:30 Pacific time, excuse me. We'll be talking about what happened with the Atlanta Falcons and also the Thursday Night Football. And then I'll have a prediction for you for all the rest of the games that are going to be on Sunday. So thank you so much for joining me. This is Big J. I am Big J. And this is The Hype Show. Thank you so much.